What's up, everybody? This is Mind Your Money with Miss Be Helpful, a show that highlights people and stories that will inspire you to get your money right. And speaking about people with inspiring stories, today I'm so excited because I'm talking to Jamila, who is the host of Journey to Launch podcast. Jamila, what's up, girl?
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited to have you on. Like, for those of you who don't know Jamila, if you don't know about Journey to Launch podcast, I'm going to let her intro herself real quick. But all I can say right now is that everything she posts, I co sign. Like, I've learned so much from her, just from honestly, just from her personal stuff that she posts on social media. Before we started recording, I was just telling her that I found out about Arlen Hamilton's backstage tour event that sadly got canceled, but I found out about it through her. And yeah, like I'm always just checking up on her content, her feed, because she's dope. So Jamila, for those of the people that are listening or watching who don't know you, give them a little intro to who you are and a little bit about your background.
So, I'm Jamila Souffrant of Journey to Launch, the platform, the podcast, where I help people launch to financial freedom and independence. And I'm all about just like making personal finance accessible and relatable and really giving people hope and tools to help them do that. And so, I'm just excited to be here.
I love that. I love that. The hope is definitely something I can relate to because I feel like stories and people give other people a source of hope and inspiration, which is why I wanted to do this show. But I feel like yours is just like that extra oomph that people need because you share tools as well, which I feel like that like you can get all the inspiration you need, but at the end of the day, you have to start somewhere. And without the tools that you need, it's really hard. So I've learned so much from listening to your podcast. I'm like 4 or maybe 5 episodes behind. The last one I listened to was when you interviewed Dr. Pamela Jolly, which was
Oh,
such a
yes.
good, oh my goodness, that woman is like I felt like she was preaching in my, like I had the headphones and I was like, preach. Like she was such a motivational woman. Like just the way she speaks, her voice is so, oh my goodness, it moves you. And I love that episode. It was a little bit over an hour long, but you guys, it was so worth it. Like that is such a good episode. And I got to go back and check the
Yeah.
last couple ones out. You just released one with a bunch of other podcasters, right?
Oh yeah. So the one I released on April 1st for Financial Literacy Month was I decided just to get some non-money nerds on the podcast. Like because sometimes what happens is like it's kind of like an echo chamber a little bit. Sometimes if you hear the same people over and over. So I enlisted some of my podcast friends that also have cool podcasts, different subjects where we could just talk about money.
Love that.
Like, let's just talk about money, how we were raised with money, how that's impacted what we do now. And let's talk about our insecurities,
That's
all the
amazing.
things, which hopefully can help normalize the conversation for
That's
people. So, yeah, it was
beautiful
really good.
because I feel like that's like everybody who sees that and who hears that, like that is such a model. Like this is what we should be doing when we're out hanging out with our girlfriends and we're at brunch talking about boys and talking about movies and talking about a trip and everything. Let's make money part of that girl chat. Let's make money part of that conversation. So anyway, I love that. I haven't listened, but I am listening to it real soon. It's on my list. I got to catch like your last 3 or 4 recent posts. But all right, I want to jump in because I want to get this a little bit of juicy questions at you because I think one of the things people think is when they see influencers and podcasters and video hosts, all kinds of people in the financial space, they just think that we have our ish together. Like we must know about money. We must just have it together. We're just a different species. And that's not true. Like a lot of us may, I'm sure there's so many mistakes that we've made. You talked a lot about that on your podcast as well, things that you made mistakes with in the past and you learned from it. But I'm sure that there are certain ones that pop up in your mind that like you kind of regret. So is there a purchase or maybe a time you spent money on something like a service or experience and you spend so much money, like it was so expensive, but it was like ridiculous. And today you wish you could go back and take it back. You really regret it. What would that be?
Yeah. So I will say, I know this is annoying when people say they don't regret anything. It's always a
Yep,
lesson.
yep, yep.
But I'm kind of like that. But I would say this, like back in my 20s, I definitely was more into the designer bags. So I definitely made some purchases of designer bags, some Louis Vuitton bags that like literally right now are in my closet because I don't know, like I'm just like, I don't really care
Right.
anymore. But I spent definitely some change on some bags back in my day where it's like, if I could put my mentality back then, I'd be able to probably spend it or invest it in other areas. Now, no shade to anyone who loves bags, but for me, like I'm just not that person anymore. So I'm just like, maybe I can pass this down to my daughter at some
Yeah, no,
point.
I love that. That's honestly, I've noticed that about myself too, like how much we change over time with like the way we prioritize money spending. Because I used to care so much about clothes and shoes. Oh, actually, fun fact: me and Jamila went to the same middle school. We both went to Philippa Schuyler
Oh,
in
yeah.
Bushwick, where I grew up.
Yes.
Funny, I just thought of that because middle school was actually the place for me where that started. Like you had to have Jordans because we had uniform, so you had to wear the uniform with the gray skirt with the white shirt, but you could wear whatever shoes you wanted or whatever sneakers. So of course it was just like a sneaker competition. Everybody would come in with Tims, with Jordans and Nikes, and I always had like pay less, no brand sneakers that my mom bought for like $15, or like I had some K Swiss sneakers that like were like not popular, and that made me feel like whenever I got money, I wanted to spend it buying name brand stuff. So I definitely relate to that, but I am no longer like that. I wear like plain stuff. I don't really care about name brands anymore. I feel like quality is more important than whatever the name is label is on it. And honestly, if it's just simple, even if it's something that's not expensive, it could bring you a lot of happiness and joy. And you could wear it a lot, even if it doesn't have all the whatever
Yeah,
name brand.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy how you're like you just evolve. Like I evolved from that. And again, like I think it's wonderful. Like if you still find joy, like I love also people who find joy in like putting things together
Yes.
and getting, capsule wardrobe pieces. I think that's dope. Like
Yeah.
I want to get back to like doing some more of that when that's more of a like priority. But like for me, I'm just like, I'm kind of like just especially as a mom of three, I'm just like, I'm just trying to get through the day, like and
Yes. Okay.
not walk out the house with stains.
You got right, right. No stains on your clothes is like that's like the high bar right now, right? Well, good thing we're not really leaving the house around now coronavirus, because we're just locked up in the house. I've been in pajamas and t-shirts, and no pants, just walking around the house. I love it. But at least from the waist up, I gotta look good for my Zoom calls. But yeah, I just love what you said, because I feel like it's so relatable for you to realize that when you start adjusting and shifting your money mindset to things that matter more to you. And it doesn't really matter what anybody else thinks about it. If you rock with it, if it makes you happy and you can afford it, do you, boo? Do it. Like that makes so much sense. Okay, so let's talk about the opposite experience. Was there a time where you made a purchase and it was so expensive? Maybe other people look into your situation and be like, "Oh, she's wilding out of control. Like I would never spend that much. She's crazy." But you actually stand firm by your purchase because it was worthwhile for you. What would that expensive thing be?
Yeah, so for me, I bought a luxury car in my 20s, a
Mhm.
BMW Coupe 328 XI.
I don't
I
know what
remember
none of that means,
black.
because I don't have a
Yeah, it
driver's
was a
license. I don't know what none of that means, but girl, I trust it was fabulous.
yeah, it was listen, it was used, but I paid for it in cash
Hey,
actually. So I didn't have
hey.
a
That's
I didn't
good.
have like a payment. So that was good, but it was like a lot of money.
Mm,
At the time, but like I had just moved into my condo in Dumbo, Brooklyn,
okay.
and I was feeling myself like, I was just like, I live in a great like little apartment, and like I now have a luxury car. This is from driving like a really old car for a long time
Yeah.
in college and after college. And honestly, like I did get rid of it when I started to have children because it was a coupe, and who wants to mess around trying to get a baby back in the coupe? And our priorities changed.
Yeah.
But that I can't lie, it felt good driving that car. Like
Yes.
it felt really good driving it, and it was more of like an ego thing.
Yeah.
And it just was one of those things that I don't regret that.
Hmm.
Like I enjoy now having that luxury car, and so now I drive like a regular kind of more economical
Yeah.
car. And for me, like I'm kind of I did that already, so it's not something I'm like, oh, I need to get a luxury
Yep.
car now. If I get that again, fine, but it's not like a goal anymore because I feel like I've
Yep,
experienced
yep.
it.
Been there, done that. You got that, you check that box off. You know what that feels like. That's so funny. That reminds me, I did an episode recently with Nasima from Financially Intentional, and she said the same thing. She said she spent a lot of money on her car. It was a luxury car. I think she has a Tesla. And she said, honestly, people might think I'm
Yeah,
crazy for spending six figures on a car, but it adds so much value to my life. And it makes me feel like I made it. Like I got the car that I want.
listen. If you have the money, like I always say, my husband, like he used to have a luxury car, but he used to lease his
Yeah.
car, and we all both got economical cars. And I know that he wants a luxury car again, like one day. And I would love to be able to be in a position
Yeah.
to like, with those Christmas commercials where like they come out,
Uh-huh.
there's a
Big old
bow.
bow on
Like
it. Yep.
it's kind of ridiculous, but I want to be in a position one day to be able like to surprise him with like a
Yes.
nice car.
Yes.
And so it's like never say never. And people like Nasima, which is my
Yeah.
homegirl, like, and I've seen her car in person. It is dope.
Yep.
I'm just like, listen, if I could afford that right now and still reach my goals,
Right.
I'd do it.
Right.
So do what
That's
works for
right.
you.
I love that. Do what works for you. Okay, so let's rewind a little bit back. We talked about how we went to the same middle school, and I talked a little bit about what the vibe was like in that environment. But even before that, maybe think about like childhood experiences or coming up in your family, growing up, being raised, by Caribbean immigrants, right? Your parents are Caribbean immigrants.
Yep,
Okay,
Jamaican.
Jamaicans.
Yep.
So, and which Jamaicans are heavy in Brooklyn, so that makes a lot of sense. But Jamaicans,
Flatbush, link up.
Look, Trinidadians, Haitians, Dominican, Puerto Ricans, we run Brooklyn in case y'all didn't know. Okay. So, the old Brooklyn, we still out here, but the old Brooklyn though. But
Yeah.
if you could think back to like growing up with Jamaican immigrant parents and that whole experience, what were some early memories, experiences that you remember, like either talking about conversations about money or lessons that you learned about money early on?
Yeah, so I'd say we never really like there were no sit down money lessons, but I was really lucky to have a grandmother. So my grandmother immigrated here, my mom immigrated here, and then I was like kind of brought up a few months
Yeah.
later. And they were such hard workers. So I saw that from early
Hmm.
on. And I never was given like a lot. Like I had just enough. There was a lot of love, but I was never like spoiled per se or had like a lot of like, nice things, luxury clothes. Like I had to work for that. So that taught me the value of money really early on.
Mm,
And also, what they did do, because they were big on saving. They didn't know
mm,
investing and all that, but saving they were big on because you just never knew when you needed money. So my mom, I remember that she went with me when I was about 5 or 6 to open up my first bank account,
that's
and
amazing.
that stood with me. And
Wow.
so that kind of saving habit was instilled. That kind
Wow.
of is why I'm the way I am today, was
5 years
saving.
old. Imagine, oh my goodness, that's beautiful. Like and too, what I noticed too, like I feel like a lot of immigrant parents that come, like at least the older generation, that first came, like the first ones that came to immigrated to this country, Caribbean, Latino, whatever, Indian, Asian. I've noticed that they go one of two ways generally. I mean, this is very much a generalization, but in my experience, this is what I've seen, that they either go all the way to the route of like, we gotta save, money is so important, like we have to work, we gotta open a business because we have opportunities in this country. We're gonna open a business, we're gonna be doing real estate and things like that. And then you got this other piece, which is, I could speak to it personally because this is how I was raised, which is the immigrants that come to the country and think like, I'm just so glad to be here. They let me in and I'm just going to get my food stamps and I'm going to just take what they give me and be grateful and just thank you, Jesus. And that's it. And like, I noticed like my dad and my mom, like they have so many amazing creative ideas. My dad is a chef. He worked in an Italian restaurant for decades. Do you think this man ever thought he could open a restaurant or thought of opening a restaurant? No. But he was at one point the head chef. He could have owned an amazing restaurant with Dominican and Italian fusion in Brooklyn. He never did it. And my mom sews so well. She can make dresses like this. Like, and I learned to sew from her, but she never opened a business, a boutique, a shop, nothing. And so I feel like I'm the first generation that is starting to think like this, like the mindset that we have about generating wealth, not just saving your little money. So I love that your parents actually kind of already had that mindset, right? About like saving money and growing your money.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because like the examples you gave, some of that it's like interesting because it's part like not everyone's meant to be like an entrepreneur or have their
True,
own business, right? So
true.
part of it is like they had those amazing skill sets and maybe they didn't have the capacity to want to even go that
Right,
route, right?
right.
But what they did maybe with the income that they made then could have changed things. Because I know too, like my husband's parents are Haitian and they came
Hmm.
here with nothing, like most
Yep,
immigrants. And,
right.
his father still, mostly talks Creole. And his mom is the one, like they ended up buying a house. Like, like I feel like my grandmother ended up buying a house, like even with like the limited resources that they had, like
Wow.
they were just like, I just want to own a piece of something. And then I think that's why it's up to us, like as the next generation who
Yes,
has more resources, has more like because they were just like trying to put food on the table and
right.
survive. And now I don't, nowadays, with the recession and all that coming, it's like it can be like that again. But I think for a lot of us, we're in positions where we have such a head start than they
That's
did.
right.
So like we should
That's
be able
right.
to do so much more.
Yep. I love that. And actually that makes me think of the conversation you had with Dr. Pamela Jolly, where she was saying you need to tap into your ancestry. You need to tap into, ask your grandparents, ask your parents, what do you have? Do you guys have accounts? Do you have houses? Like, because a lot of times we think we have to recreate the wheel. We have to start from scratch. We got to do all this hustling. And it's like, honestly, at least figure out what you already have in place from your family and continue the legacy and don't, feel like you have to do everything from scratch. I mean, in my case, I do have to do everything from scratch. My parents ain't got nothing, but at least, they provided me with love and support, and like they were strict with me so that I could have the intelligence to read and learn about personal finance on my own.
Well, and I'd like to also frame it to where I think even when you're not given like any head start, so we talk about like privilege a lot, and so
Right.
like I think everyone has a form of privilege. Of course, there's different
Hmm.
levels to it, but I think if you're listening to this podcast, if you have access to the internet, you have privilege.
That's right.
Like and I feel like so sometimes like you not getting or seeing or being given anything is what
Hmm.
fuels your fire today, and you could have been a
Mm,
different person without that, like,
right.
and so like I just think it's one of those things where sometimes it's the mentality, it's the lack of that it
Yes.
makes you who you are, which is like you can't, and if you took that back, you might not be who you are,
That's
like
right.
so appreciate even the things you didn't get because this is
Yep.
it's causing you to realize what you want and what you don't
That's
want to be.
so
So
true. Yeah, and it makes you who you are. Like you can't you're gonna change who you are if you change those pieces. You got to take the good with the bad. Everything about you is what makes you unique. I love that, and I had a hard journey trying to love all the pieces of myself because I remember when I was in college, I was very embarrassed that I was poor. But I came to a point where I was like, I am who I am. Like I just got to wear it as a badge of honor. I can't be afraid to get a little ghetto sometimes. I'm from Brooklyn. I can't be afraid to speak Spanish sometimes. I'm Latina. I can't be afraid to just be my full self. I think I'm starting in my 30s now to finally be confident with that. Like, I know I love that message.
yeah.
All right, so let's talk about your brand. Let's talk about all the things that you're doing. So you have the blog, Journey to Launch, the podcast, Journey to Launch, and Money Launch Club, which actually a friend of mine, Lisa Net, she messaged me on Instagram, she was like, I found out about Journey to launch through you, and now I'm part of the Money Launch Club. Thank you for sharing her. She's amazing. I was like, yes, oh my goodness, do it, do it.
I love Isenet, she's
I love
awesome.
her too. She's
um
dope. She's such a dope.
yeah.
First of all, shout out to Isa Nan. She has a dope company that she created called Woke Foods, which is Dominican vegan cuisine. She is amazing. So check her out at Woke Foods. But anyway, back to Jamila.
No, so you mean like what, like my platform's about all that,
Yes,
like.
all the pieces and like what made you decide like, okay, I'm going to take this and I'm going to build it into something, a platform that I can share with others, a blog, a podcast, a launch club that people can come and have accountability. Like, what was your vision, motivation for all of that?
Yeah, so for me, like Journey to Launch first started as just a blog. I was just like, I'm just gonna blog my way and show what I'm doing to reach financial independence because I found
Yeah.
out about this thing that I never heard about before where people were saving a lot of money, retiring
Hmm.
early, quitting
Hmm.
their jobs. I'm like, I need to figure out how to do this. So I did start
That
Journey
sounds
to
like
Launch.
it for me.
Yeah,
It sounds like
basically, I
it
was
for
like,
me.
I need to do this. So I just started Journey to Launch to blog that. Like, here's my journey to launch
Ah,
to financial independence.
gotcha.
And it quickly turned into when I started to post, I like created my Instagram account years ago. And I was posting all these like quotes. Like I didn't even like show my face for a long time because I was just like, like, and believe it or not, because I am very private, kind of like I just like kind of chilling. And
Yeah,
then I was like, you know what? Let me just start sharing a little bit more about me. So started showing my face a bit more, started being a little
yeah,
more open with the numbers and how much we were saving. And once
yeah.
I started doing that, people were just like what? How? We need more,
Got,
which
yeah,
kind of prompted me to, start opening up more, sharing more of the journey,
yep.
realizing that wait, like there's people who I can now help on the path.
Hmm.
And then I started the podcast ultimately because it was taking me forever to write a blog post. I was like, all right, this is taking me too long. I love podcasts, so maybe I could do that. And I knew
Yeah.
exactly what kind of podcast I wanted, what was missing,
Yes,
because I love podcasts so much. I had a long commute, so I was listening to so many. And
that's
that's why I started
awesome.
the podcast a few years later. And the podcast is really the main source because the
Yep.
blog, like I'm not writing as much anymore because the podcast takes a lot of work. But the podcast is like the main source, the main platform in which I disseminate information every week,
Yeah.
every Wednesday, Journey to Launch. And then I have the social media accounts. And then, there's other ways that like as a business now, since I'm a full-time
Hmm.
entrepreneur, that
Yeah.
I make money or I'm building out making money.
It started for you with real estate, right? You got the real estate in Brooklyn, in Dumbo, which is like, whoo, you got lucky girl. That is prime real estate. And so then did that kind of like launch you into the FI and like the whole movement of, building a lot of wealth?
Yeah, so it's interesting that you can be on the journey before you are aware that you're on the journey. So like
Mm,
I consciously started Journey to Launch way after I bought real estate. I didn't know anything about financial independence. Like I
yeah,
knew I wanted to eventually have a lot of money one day, but
right,
when I made that purchase, it was literally just I was following in the footsteps of my grandmother because she had bought something in Fort Greene before it was Fort Greene,
right.
and it's a three family, And I remember when I came of age in college, like it was worth so much money, and I'm just like,
Mhm.
she didn't realize, she didn't even realize what she did.
Right.
And I started getting interested in real estate. I started seeing some older people around the neighborhood who started talking about that they own multiple properties. And I was like, you know what?
Mm.
I want to do that. And so
Right.
I started looking, and I couldn't afford anything like at the time because it
That's
was just
real. I
crazy.
can't afford anything
I,
now.
no, right? No, I really couldn't afford anything. Like it was crazy back then, though. Like I'm like, oh, I wish I could have the money because it's a steal nowadays, right?
Yes.
Like, but
Yes.
I saw an advertisement for an apartment in Dumbo, which Dumbo wasn't what it is now. So that stands for down under the Manhattan Bridge overpass for people who may not
Not
be
from New
in New
York.
York.
Right, right, right.
Yeah. And it was just like, there was no buildings. It was not the Dumbo that it is today. And it was just like, oh, we have studio apartments starting this high rise from like 300,000. So I was
Wow.
like, that's the cheapest I've seen for anything. Cause the things I was looking at was like 600 to a million.
Yep.
And this was someone who was like 21. I was 21 at the time looking.
Wow.
And I was like, well, even though that's still too much money, like 300,000, that's way better than a million. So I was like, maybe I can try that. So anyway, long story short, I ended up buying something in Dumbo, and I'd say like that's the best decision, like the best thing I've ever done financially. And
Wow.
it was way before I even started intentionally on this movement, on this path.
Yeah.
But it's helped me so much. Like honestly, it's helped me so much because one, my mindset is like completely changed from that. Like I realized like you could literally do anything. And two, it's just like a great now part of my portfolio. Like it's
Right.
now legacy wealth that I can pass down to my kids.
Mhm.
So yeah, it real estate is a love for me. So when I did start working full time, I did go into real
Yeah.
estate, and I got my master's in real estate. So there's like a big part of like I think my professional and personal love that's
That's
there. So yeah,
awesome.
real estate is definitely a big
That's
part of
dope.
it.
So what were you doing when you were 21 and you like how'd you come with the down payment? Did you have a full-time job? Were you already
Yeah,
saving for it?
that's a really good question. So you needed 10% to lock down the
That's
apartment, like
30K.
to go into
That's 30K
contract.
cash.
Right. Well, it's 38. It
Ooh,
was because the apartment was
ooh.
385. So I needed 38,000 and to just to go into contract. So the good thing about this was one, it was at the time where because it was pre-construction, I didn't need to come up with the rest until 2 years later. It would take like 2.5 years to
Wow.
build. So that was great. So I was like, all right, I only need 38 now. I would tell you this, and I have no shame in saying this. Like my mom actually gifted me for the first 10%, like a
Oh,
good
that's
amount of
so
that money.
nice.
Like
Ooh,
she
your mom was
literally,
looking
and
out.
and when I
Ooh.
no, and I think about, because some parents would be like, that's a
Right, right,
loan, you
right,
gotta
right,
pay me
right.
back.
My dad would be like, "So you paying me back plus interest?"
Right. But I say this to say one, so she gave me a good amount to help secure the first 10%. I also had savings because I was working as an
Yeah.
intern. So I had been working through Inroads as an
Ah,
intern
yep.
for a few years, and I was saving. See that saving mindset. I didn't know why I was saving, but I was saving 90% of my
Smart
checks.
girl.
So I had some money, like I had some of that 10%, but she gave me the rest. And I think about how like she never ended up buying anything for herself, like
Uh-huh.
real estate. And she again came here, had me at 19 years
Wow.
old, 20 years old, got pregnant at 19, had me at 20, came here
Ooh.
with nothing. Yet she was able to give me a little head start in life. And so the other thing that helped, so that helped me secure the first 10%. But in 2 years, I needed the additional 10% because you needed
Ugh,
20% altogether and closing costs and to pay
ugh.
the mortgage. So another great thing that my mom did was while it was being constructed, I lived at home and I was working. So at that
Mm,
time, I started to work in corporate America. And my by the time everything happened and it was closed, like the
right.
apartment closed, I was able to save the
That's
additional
awesome.
money and like move it. So there's so many lessons I feel like for people because even if you're someone like maybe you're not in my position today, right? Like you're more like my mom, right? Like you more like don't have it, but the kind of mindset she had, and she was on the podcast too. I always forget her episode, but I always tell people to go listen to
Yes,
that story. So because it just shows that even as a single mom with nothing, how she was able to put me in the
that's
position I
amazing.
am today, and how I'm taking that baton and
That
running
is
with it.
awesome. Oh my goodness, that makes like my hair stand up because it's so true for us to think about how we're struggling right now. But mind you, we got the internet, we got Facebook, we got Instagram, we have at our fingertips Twitter, we have LinkedIn. We could find people in real estate, link up with them, connect with them. Like, what did your mom have? She had literally nothing but the dollars that she was saving up and her drive and ambition to make her daughter's life better than what she had. That and like honestly, a lot of people, that's enough and they can push for it just with that. So I love that. Oh my goodness. Now I know where you get your grit from and your passion and all. Because honestly, you guys, if you have not checked out Journey to Launch, go literally just listen to one episode and you will see that I'm not lying because Jamila takes her podcast is like her baby. It's like her fourth baby. You got 3 kids, right? This is your 4th kid. This is your 4th kid,
Yeah.
girl, because the detail-oriented nature of this woman's podcast, I'm telling you guys, the show notes, the additional links that she provides, the notes that she shares while she's interviewing. I mean, I'm talking about a level of detail where you do not do that unless you love what you're doing. So, I mean, I just appreciate you because of the care and the craft that you put into it. You're just like my hashtag goals. So thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you.
All right. So I have this fun question that I like to ask to wrap up, which is if you could change every single dollar bill that exists in rotation, that is anywhere in the world that is in circulation. And I'm gonna wipe off the dollar bills, the face on the dollar bill, which is George Washington. Sorry, I'm gonna put your face on it. And then above it, you could put whatever you want. Your money message, money mantra, money motto, money, whatever you want to call it, slogan that everybody who touches money would see. What would your message be?
Oh my goodness. I feel like you gave me a heads up that you were going to ask this and I still didn't think of anything, but I'm gonna come up with something. Let me see. Let me see. I have so many, but like that will come to mind. So let me just pick one. It would have to do something with abundance. So it would probably be
Mm.
something of there is more than enough. You deserve it all.
Oh, there's more than enough. I love that. We always think like, oh, but what if she already did that. I can't. There's enough for both of y'all to do it.
Yeah, that's why there's more than enough and you deserve it all. Like I feel
I
like
love
both of
that.
those together because there's so much money out there in the world. I know sometimes like in a position if you're in it, you don't see it and it's hard to see it.
Yes,
I get it. I
yes,
totally get that. But I think there's so much out there. Like there's a reason why the rich keep getting richer,
that's
like
right.
why,
That's right.
like the connections and sometimes money is not always like dollar bills. It's
Right, right,
like
right.
connections, it's your skill set. So I just feel like there's so many ways to think about money and to make money and
That's
that we
right.
deserve it. So the other thing is like don't feel bad about wanting money or having money. Like
Yes,
you deserve
I
that
love
too.
that.
So
Oh, I love
I
that
just
so
leave it
much.
at
That
that.
reminds me of, again, I'm just going to keep referencing this episode because if anything, start with this one. It was so good. But when you were interviewing Dr. Pamela Jolly, she said that she read all these books about billionaires because she wanted to see what they all had in common so she can take notes about what to do. Like, and that's just so true. You see, there's those reasons why the rich get richer because of what they do, the skills that they have, the people the connections that they build. Like, and we have to do that. We have to emulate that so that we can also grow and get the abundance that's out there for us too. Okay. It's not just for people that were already rich when they were born. Okay. It's for us too.
No, you can create that wealth. You can create just like my mom started with me, just like I'm doing with my kids. You can create that.
All right, girl. If anybody wants to find you besides Instagram at Journey to Launch and the Journey to Launch blog, where else can they find you, reach out to you, hit you up, and let you know that you inspired them with your story and your episode today?
Oh, thank you so much. So you can go to journeytolaunch.com and wherever you listen to this podcast, you can find my podcast, Journey to Launch. And then on Instagram, Twitter, like you said, at Journey to Launch. And then, just hit me up. I love when I hear that people heard me like somewhere else or are just
Yep.
discovering me. And that means you're a journeyer now. So no debates. That means when you are on the
Love
journey
it.
with me to financial freedom,
I
you're a
love that
journeyer.
so much. Thank you so much, Jamila. You are the freaking bomb. I love it.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.